Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of News from a World in Flux. My name's Clare Farrell, I'm one of the co-founders of Extinction Rebellion, and I'm going to be in conversation today with Brima Conteh, a Sierra Leonean founder of an organisation called Sustain Salone. They are working on sustainable development and poverty reduction. Part of this connection comes from the anti-racist allyship work that I've been helping to develop with others in Extinction Rebellion, and particularly we wanted to hear more from the stories and the experiences of Global South activists and the Black experience of climate. So welcome, Conteh. Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit more?
Yes, thank you for having me. Yes, I am the founder of Sustain Salone. It's a social enterprise established to promote sustainable activities and programs in the areas of agriculture, renewable energy, sustainable housing, and sustainable cultural policies oriented in development. So Sustain Salone means bring sustainable programs and development to Sierra Leone. So I've been an activist. I've been involved in anti-racism campaigns in Europe, but also in establishing connections for the African diaspora globally. And then I started to plan, to prepare, to say, look, you need to go back to Sierra Leone to do things. Sierra Leone needs you. The rural people need you. Those you grew up with, it's a kind of wanting to journey back to sources.
Now that you're back in Sierra Leone, can you tell me a bit about the projects that you're working on? Why are they a good idea now?
Initially, I had wanted to work with the government of the day because most of the people, like the president, the then Speaker of the House, they taught me at school. So because of my global African diaspora work, including Paris, I had connections with some of the diplomats from African countries accredited to UNESCO. Mm-hmm. And I told them about my desire to go, and they said, well, you don't go empty-handed. We have programs from UNESCO which you can take to your country. And I felt it was an interesting idea. And I said, so how are we going to do it? And I said, well, we train you, we coach you, we give you some time to know what's happening, what to do. And that's how I went to Sierra Leone. But in the package that I presented to the then government, there is a whole area around sustainable livelihoods for post-conflict populations. And you guys, right? That's where my interest was in. Mm-hmm. But I thought this was a good piece. But like, as I was saying previously, on money coming, then the big powers want to be in control, and then things will not happen. So I felt, no, this is not what we need to do. So, and plus, they made sure that they knew about my background, and what I was doing here. They said, what are we doing with this revolutionary here amongst, midst? So they didn't want me in. And I decided to work within knowing the communities better. We began to look at the societies as they were, and then began to think of how we are going to bring this sustainability process in place. Mm-hmm. And then we look at agriculture as an option. And it had to be me sending money. This is a country used to, they had civil war, Ebola, conflict upon conflict. So nothing normally works. Mm-hmm. You have to build from scratch. And for me, that meant spending money, and trying people, various groups. And finally, we found some good people. Then we began on basic food crops. The principle is that Conteh funds, okay, but you own a little over 50-60% of what you're doing, so that you won't steal again. No, it's yours.
Yeah.
And this began to work.
So co-ops, really?
Yeah.
Sort of some kind of
That's
co-op
why we say
setup.
a social enterprise, whatever we call it. It began to work, and then we were confronted with many problems. People not even knowing how much land they were cultivating, just random farming, rains coming, rains not coming, so some good harvest, some bad harvest. Then I realized that we need to move into serious poverty reduction programs. So, because when you produce like rice, after harvest, what you do, you sell because you need money. And then you end up buying rice to eat.
Yeah.
Not good. So, okay, number one, can we begin to add plus rice, plus something, plus something, plus something? Simple methods, because you have to be with them on the spot, regularly, talking to them. There should not be any break, no lull, no. And we tried a few farmers, it worked.
So was this trying to grow multiple things in the same place, or is it separate places?
Well, we allowed them to do what they wanted to do first.
Okay.
Because again, I remind you, we're coming from civil war, Ebola, and no. And so we back with literature online.
Yeah.
So, and then we try to know and learn what is happening in other areas, like Benin, in other countries.
Yeah.
So there was a constant flow of information. Then we began to talk about permaculture. Okay? The space can be used for different things.
Yeah.
So it's a constant action on the field, learning online, happening together. And then the yield comes first. We don't want to check how much you made and so forth. Just you are part of it. You do it.
Yeah.
It's important to build the confidence. It's important for the farmers to feel that they are free.
Yeah.
To feel that they can do with their own initiative. That again began to work. In some places it didn't. Well, in many places it worked. And we began to build around these areas where we have best practices.
Yeah.
Then these were all food crops production. It was rice, yam, groundnuts, corn. What do you mean? Then I began to say, okay, we need to add one tree crop. That's where the oil palm came in. Then in the oil palm, we realized that there is a lot that can be extracted, not just the oil. And this can create jobs. And this can bring revenue. If you do it steadily, slowly. Then we bought manual palm oil digesters. Previously, they used to do with their feet, with all the impurities that you can think of and the health hazards that you can think of. So we got them the digester, one area, and the other area, we want. Then three, then all to neighboring Liberia. Now, in terms of numbers, from one region, we started with 50 farmers. Now we're talking about 100. And now it's about 300, in other areas. This is just manual processing. Now, if we go to the semi-mechanical and the other areas, imagine, and this has motivated the farmers to do even bigger fields. And some of the messages they were sending to me is just, too great. They're so happy that, and they say, we have tried, on the NGOs, they say, we've tried all sorts of structures have been here, Red Cross and so forth. But this one seems to be different. So let's make it different to the durable.
When you work with big organisations like that, do they create sort of ongoing dependency? It sounds like what you're doing is setting up independence.
That's what they even told me. Because this is something that you build up. First message I sent to them, I said, these big organizations, these funders are not helping. We have to say that. How? It's okay, you have been dependent on them for all these years. How much is your worth today? What is your capital?
Yeah.
What is your net worth? How has farming helped you with all this method? Okay. If we try on our own, so this is not for me. Okay, I'm giving money, but you own. Then you'll be able to build a feature for your children. This is your own. The farm is not me, it's your own.
You own a farm.
Everywhere. And so it was hard because we had to cut down on certain things. We have to find ways and means of making sure we innovate and then we move forward. So this has been the talk. And it plays a great role. So we are now at a stage where we know we are going to integrate other tree crops. So you have oil palm. You integrate cacao from Ivory Coast. We know where to get it, and it grows quickly in 18 months. You integrate cashew, which in itself has got similar ways of extracting wealth, like oil palm. By the time, and then we go into some sort of trading systems. We create a farmer-based organization. We develop a system whereby we can bring in these tools, and the farmer-based organization, of course, you have to have a farm, you have to have all these things we'll be doing, all right, should be in charge. But we build money, or we create the wealth together in a cooperative manner, and we'll move. Because then we can be able to help and sell to other farmers.
So you have multiple things that need to be set up all at the same time.
So that is why here is going to be Sustain Africa CIC, Community Interest Companies. Because that's one of the ways you create independence, you create wealth, and you make people see that, yes, they can move one level to another level. I've been through the various stages of what it means to want something. This also brings me back to my earlier history. And I had to live with my mother. She used to sell food, sell like donuts. I used to have them on my head and go around and selling. That's why the globalization started for me, by the way. Because knowing, people speaking different languages and going to sell, and then bring back the money and then buy food for us to eat, right? About a year ago, there was this, President Macron was doing something on global poverty, and then you had this Poverty Action Lab from where? Harvard University. Well, what I thought was, my mother, who's still alive, she has more than PhD in poverty reduction, okay? And so bring her here, she will explain to you. This, so that experience in my life helped me to be able to work with farmers, building up piece by piece. Plus, my mother trained other women. This is the process. And so the multiple community interest companies represent ways and means of creating wealth, jobs for people, because we got to share. If we don't share, then we'll be in for trouble. Then we're not doing anything serious. And we got to forget about me. No, it's got to be us.
Really interesting. I spoke to somebody the other day about the concept of the commons. He's doing quite a lot of work on this area, and it seems like a very simple thing to say when you hear it, but for me it was quite a sort of light bulb switching on, which was if you have people who are in dialogue about what they need to do. Let's say I was talking about local community assemblies and people organising around localised politics, and comparing that with citizens' assemblies and these sort of more complex, established kind of citizens' juries or citizens' assemblies. In order for there to be a significant levelling of like mutual power between people in a space, they have to know that they are interdependent with each other. Because if they're just talking about something which is like an abstract policy and may or may not affect them, or they're talking about something which may affect some other people that they're supposed to care about, or there's inequality, or there's something that you end up with a completely different set of dynamics than if I know that my access to food is tied to your access to food, and that person and that person and that person. And so my stability of my housing or my food or my water or whatever it is that I need, is the negotiating that we do is about something that we concretely depend on one another for. And for that to be the case, a lot of other things have to change, right? Because, you know, looking at it in the UK, my access to food probably depends on like about 5 supermarket companies, really, or whoever's in charge of London, which only has 3 days of food supplies at any one point. So really, but my food supply doesn't depend on my neighbours. It doesn't depend on the people I would meet in a community assembly, because we don't have any purchase on these sort of systems of control, vital supplies of things, which I thought was very, I don't know why, it was just really instructive for me to hear that clarity. No, you have to be dependent on each other for this to work. And I thought, shit, that's really important.
Yeah. But what we are doing with these communities, we need to put in place production and transformation units. We make sure there's a gender balance, because women are at the top. We make sure there's a youth balance. We make sure that everybody, because everybody in that community has a little say, to sort of speak. Either they own the land where the fruits were harvested, or they live in the community, and it's a duty of the community to bring them on board. So that's how we roll it out and make sure that everybody is doing something, is involved. And once we're able to generate enough wealth, we begin to look at public building institutions. How is the school in the village? Is it correct? How about water? Do we have a well? Etc., etc. So it's, yes, we are going to generate profits, but you don't take the profits, and that's already agreed, It has to be tied within the community, but you can still do your thing. So we don't know how. We hope we're able to go as far as possible. We're not going to create a utopian society, but we make sure also, how do we make sure the wealth does not just disappear all of a sudden? Begin to think in those terms. We will need houses. Okay, so what type of houses? We're already thinking along those lines, because once money comes in, you want to have a house. Should you do cement? No, because this is an ecological program. So, but we have clay in abundance in Sierra Leone. If you heat the clay, it becomes solid bricks, like some of the houses, like these ones. Okay? How about that? We make sure the money we generate stays as long and as much as possible within. Inside.
So can you tell me, how does this work make sense in light of the climate crisis, the impacts that are hitting that area of Africa now? I think for Extinction Rebellion people, updates and information about how impacts are starting to unfold in different places is important to understand.
First of all, I had you mentioned Guinea and Liberia. It's good. There is in Western Africa is a regional body called ECOWAS, Economic Community of West African States, which involves 16 countries, including Nigeria and others. And it's about economic development, intergovernmental organization. So they have in Guinea, Guinea is home to the Fouta Djallon Plateau. This is a high mountainous area, Fouta Djallon, where many of the rivers in West Africa come from. And so ECOWAS sent a monitoring team, technical monitoring team, to Guinea to see about this river, this plateau. And so they contacted me. They told me clearly that in the next 30 years, because of human activities, because of degradation, etc., there's going to be a serious water crisis in West Africa, because most of the rivers will run dry. When they told me that, we called the local farmers, and everybody was saying 15 years they would run dry. What can we do? It seems our farming methods, which should integrate ecology could be very useful. And they realized that, and they said, look, we want you to take the whole of West Africa. We said, okay, wait, hold on, we'll go there slowly.
Fix the whole of West Africa, please.
Take it, And we want partnership, we want to work with you, we want this. We said, wait. We are a community-based organization, and it has to go step by step. But we are happy to know that we're on the right track. So that is just to tell you this nature, the status in Western Africa. And we think we can learn from experiences that have been done elsewhere in Eastern Africa to help salvage the situation. Now, for a local farmer today in Western Africa, the biggest threat to sustainable farming is for him to sustain his activities is climate change. Rains come at random, or sometimes they don't come at all, and heat. We know that how do the Kenyans manage climate change, because they have a far more advanced system of farming than in Western Africa, Kenyans, So we contacted the Kenyans. We are in various WhatsApp groups. There's one specialist on irrigation, and we had him do online training for farmers in Sierra Leone on irrigation and how at a modest cost you can make sure your plants are watered, But we believe that it has to be taken at a much more strategic and larger level.
Yeah.
Climate change is there to stay and for a long time. That's why we integrate tree planting into our farming methods. That's why we also work on new alternative ways of reducing rivers, which you sent me. Ecosia is a group from Germany.
Yeah.
And there are other groups doing that in Ethiopia. And I mean, the question is a central thing to do is a massive reforestation for most of these areas which are being deforested and which are now like barren, and we have to bring back the the farmers to nature. We have to bring back the entire community to be in harmony with nature. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Mm-hmm. And so what we hope to do in that area is, like happened in Kenya, perhaps establish some kind of media, social media involving farming groups. And it is the farming groups which have to take the lead, not only, but they need to be at the forefront of climate change because it impacts them directly.
Yeah.
And they are the people who manage the earth and the soil. So we take climate change seriously, and we walk through adaptation, mitigation, but yes, that has to come through effective tree planting. But the tree planting in itself is not just ornamental or no. It has to be economic. What are you planting a tree for? What type of tree?
Yeah.
What do you want?
And the right tree in the right place.
Thank you.
There's a lot of projects here
Now we're talking.
Get paid to plant trees, so they plant the wrong tree in the wrong place. They don't take care of it. It dies. You go to check. They have the money from the tree planting. Thank you very much. We did plant them, and then a year later, none of them are alive. So it's very problematic in our kind of climate movement understanding. I would say that tree planting is problematic sometimes, right? So you have to do it in the right way.
That's what I'm saying. These institutions, they come through either government, NGOs, and so forth. They come with programs around tree planting.
Yeah.
If it is not integrated into the economic and ecology of the people of the area, forget it.
Yeah.
So we have some fruits, some trees like the breadfruit. If you plant the breadfruit, I'm fine, because why? It's food. It's food.
What is a breadfruit?
It's a kind of jack. They call it in Jamaica. I think it's a jack something.
Like jackfruit.
Jackfruit. Thank you. You plant also to bring in the bees with honey. Pollination takes place, etc. You plant for timber, because people sent you pictures of those boys who are doing timber logging in Sierra Leone. We spoke to them. We say, okay, you had heat waves this year. They said yes. We said, this is you. You are partly responsible. Now I know you tell me this is how I earn my living, So we have to find ways of proposing alternative livelihoods for you.
Yeah.
And say, oh, Mr. Conteh, no one has ever spoken to us about, okay, we're speaking now. Can we continue? Yes. So, alternative livelihoods, and then organize timber logging, organized cutting of trees. It can be done. It is done in Uganda, it is done. Because let's face it, at some point you need some of the trees to go. But you have to plant ahead of time if possible. And so like the young boys we were talking about, we know the trees they were felling, so some of them are over 80 years old, 100 years old. So we had to ask them, are there any traces of smaller trees growing around the area? And sometimes they say yes. So we have to protect that area first, okay? But bigger picture, the timber is used in Sierra Leone for building. So there you go. Alternative, is that an alternative way of using something else other than timber? Because those are all the thinking that you need to go through. It has to be on a very serious and strategic level of thinking about the alternatives. For us farmers, we have to make sure that we preserve, maintain the environment. Otherwise, we lose our trade. And there are many farmers who have downed their tools in Sierra Leone because of climate change.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be an increasing problem, that people who need to be working with, developing innovation, changing the way they work, finding alternative technologies, alternative materials, alternative designs and systems. If they just put things down and say, I quit, this isn't working for me, and they move away, or I guess that's something that we're going to see a lot more of in the face of climate, unless there's a real effort to try and encourage people to become more interested and more excited about the ways of doing things in different, models. And that might mean different ownership models like cooperatives, and not having the dependency on certain types of funding or certain types of big corporate money or whatever. Might mean that sort of systemic stuff in terms of money, but it might also mean in terms of the materials and the technologies that you can use in transitioning people's work.
Transition, yes.
It's interesting to me that when you look at the need for this sort of just transition, it's very rare, I think, that you hear people have a serious discussion about what just transition means. Very few people, I think, really use that term with a kind of a depth or like a roundedness to what they actually mean. But also, my background is in fashion. If you look at the fashion sector and you think about all of the global workforce, which is huge, and lots of them in the global south, and lots of them women, and you say, well, we need to make less clothes, so therefore we presumably need less people to make clothes because we have 6 generations worth of clothes right now to use, so we could just not make any for hundreds of years. Actually. So why we keep making 100 billion garments a year? Well, then what are the other jobs that people can do? Because the reason why those people are making clothes is often not because they love making clothes, although some of them do, but they're doing it for work because they have to have a livelihood. And it's all bound up in this kind of global structure, which feels very difficult to work through. In my head, the easiest way to talk about just transition in the global north for an industry like that is to go and talk to advertisers and magazines and say, you have to do just transition, So stop advertising shit people don't need, and think of a better job for yourself that will do something helpful. But that's an easy conversation to have. Once you go to farmers or garment workers or thinking through these kinds of global like supply chains and like big industries, the just transition conversation, it becomes very challenging because you have to be in direct connection with those people to be able to talk about it. I can't sit here and talk about what should the Bangladeshi garment workers do instead.
No.
It's not my
it's not
Bangladeshi,
yes.
It's not my job to resolve that, is it?
There,
but we somehow need to come together on it because it's extremely important, isn't it?
Yeah. I think what is happening in most of the global south, particularly in Africa, I think they are kind of rebels in their own right, doing things on their own side, in their own time and spaces. I'm not alone. I know of a sister who is a specialist in coffee. She's a coffee expert and so forth. I remember a conversation we had just before coming for holidays here, and we were looking at how somebody asks, so you may tap into money from the African Development Bank, and I called her. I said, "What do you think?" He said, "These things." That's the way she put it. Like I usually do. I said, "These things, they're there to tap into your time and ideas. You better do your thing on your own, and then when it becomes interesting, they will come to you."
Yeah.
So I know of a Kenyan brother. In fact, that's the one I wanted to speak to. I'll speak to him again and again. He is a kind of serial inventor. He transforms plastic into everything, including building houses. And he employs people. They collect all the refuse and use the plastics in Nairobi. So I remember when I had this question of timber for houses, I called him. I said, "Can you build? Is it thick enough to be like the timber that we're using in our houses? If anything like that happens, then we don't need the timber, So this is another one. We are talking now with some Tunisians about solar energy.
Yeah.
The idea of having multinationals come in for you to do the repackaging, redistribution, assembly, etc., we're just like, can we think of having a team, independent, and find ways and means of starting something? And I'm sure we will have people from the north who would be willing to participate in this. They look at what is happening in the global south, how people are reacting to some of these issues, how they're trying to invent, create, and innovate and move forward at their own cost. Other than that, what the bigger governments and institutions would do is come with the rhetoric and talk, or capture some of it, because they're already doing that. These seminars on innovation and sustainability and et cetera, that's all meant to attract.
Yeah. Well, and you said earlier, you used the word climate hustle.
Yeah, it's a climate and sustainability hustle. But the concrete, thing to do is to hear how those people in the South did it.
Yeah.
So we have a website.
And is that called Sustain Salone?
Sustain Salone.
Yeah.
But as I'm in the UK to incorporate something bigger, the name Sustain Salone is going to move into Sustain Africa Community Interest Companies. And plus, we will be doing events, including in the UK.
Great.
For example, we connected with storytellers, and they go all over the UK in schools. We have some videos which were shot around certain parts of northern Sierra Leone, which is on climate change. We already plan to bring the man who produced that video, and then we invite the diaspora from this area, because part of the problem too is diaspora's got money to build. So we'll be doing these events in London, and of course we go on online. We are working towards establishing our own media.
Thanks for telling us all your story, Conteh.
And thanks for having me.
Thanks again for joining us. I've learnt a lot from the conversation with Conteh, and I hope you have too. And I'll see you on the next episode.